All right, guys, we're back again with another great episode of PFREI, a passion for real estate investments. I'm your host, Fuquan Bilal. Today we got a special guest, Nick Aalerud. Did I say that right, Nick?
You said it right. You're the only one.
Oh, wow. So, Nick, we traveled in the same circles, part of a couple of masterminds. I'm actually going to read you a little bit of your bio real quick. So Nick graduated with a politics degree. Having realized that not many people like politicians or lawyers, he went into investment banking with stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and then discovered real estate business and systems, which led him to a full-time real estate investor for over 10 years. Now, we'll talk about it a little bit, but you had a rough start with the first 5 deals. Now you have a redevelopment company, AA real estate group. It buys 100 homes per year in the greater Boston area, including rehabs, lease options, condo conversions, buy and hold rentals, multi-unit buildings. And the firm current deals are being done all over New England. So you in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Southern Maine, and Connecticut, with others in PA and Florida. He also is a partner of multiple businesses and franchises, including a new kind of investor-friendly real estate brokerage, AA Premier Properties, and also works with Marianne Little as his partner in the short sale mitigation and multi-state debt settlement firm servicing and education sellers, real estate agents, and attorneys, buyers, and investors. All right, I'm going to stop there because you got like 2 more paragraphs.
I think you covered it.
I'll let you tell the rest. And actually, what I'm going to start doing for the next podcast, I'm going to have the guests introduce themselves and read their bio.
But you did a great job, Fuquan. You did a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show and adding value to the listeners. I know this is going to be a great podcast. The first question I always ask the guests, Nick, is why are you passionate for real estate investing?
Love it, Fuquan. I mean, I'm assuming I have a similar answer for a lot of your guests, but I will say this. I got into real estate because I was being overworked in the banking industry, working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, holidays, like weekends, like they kind of overworked me. And I saw an infomercial that said, hey, learn to free yourself from the corporate bounds of the corporate world and learn to buy real estate, pennies on the dollar, and got involved in the infomercial. And I got into it for the freedom, right? And it started, this is a good question because for me, it started with the financial freedom. Like I think it starts with most of us. And then as we kind of grow our businesses, and this only happened in the last 2 or 3 years out of my 15-year reign, but it starts to become impact. My new passion is impacting as many people as possible, right? Impacting either who we do work with as sellers or investors or students or even our staff and team. And that's been, I guess, my new passion for what we're doing is trying to building this team and making sure people are all taken care of.
That's awesome. So got to ring the bell because you did get the common answer is freedom. Is what that's the most common answer to the question when I ask that is freedom, more time with their family, more time to do the things they love. So, even if you are listening to this podcast and you're working corporate and you have all the benefits and you want to get that freedom, this is something that you can get into while you're working after work to kind of build that income to get to generate what you need in order to leave that 9 to 5. So, the reason that we actually created this podcast is for busy professionals who may want to get involved with something passively instead of them actively going out there and doing it. They get to leverage human capital. So people like you and I, we're the busy operators. We're in the trenches. We're leveraging other people like contractors and short sale negotiators and everyone else in sales and marketing, and they get the opportunity to ride the coattail of the experienced people. Now, let's talk a little bit about your time in the business. Where did you start from? What was the sweet spot for you? Because I see you're in the New England area in Massachusetts, and you also have some stuff in Florida and PA. But let's talk about your start and then what it progressed into, and then where you are now.
Well, where I am right now is apparently really angry at Comcast for an unstable internet connection. But besides that, so yeah, a few of your listeners might have seen some of my stuff online. Basically, I had a really, really rough start. I wanted that freedom so badly that as a banker, trying to be an active investor, not passive, but active investor nights and weekends, I got involved with a partnership out of state. I won't get into the details now. I'm sure it'd take me a while, but wrote a book on it. But there's an opportunity I had to buy 5 houses out in Minnesota. So I had never been there. Didn't know Minnesota. Didn't know this gentleman. It was all internet based. And let's buy 5 houses. This is 2005. We're going to buy them at 20% below market value. He was going to line up lease option and tenant buyers to rent out these homes for 20% above market rent. And then we'd cash out these deals in 3 years for 20% above what we paid. So, and back then you could make money at the closings, which you can't do that anymore. But back then you could get a cash from the seller. You'd pay $450,000 for a house. Seller turns around, gives you $50,000 cash back and says, good luck to you and thank you. Obviously no longer legit to do that. Long story short, bought 5 deals. We had a call with him on Monday. He didn't show up for the call. Turns out that he took his money from the closings. There were no tenant buyers. There were no P&Ss. Everything was fraudulent. And I lost all 5 houses because I had the loans on them. They were on me.
But you learned.
Oh, man. I mean, I learned everything. So the restart on that, where I started, I started there, and then I restarted without cash or credit, and I literally had to learn how to hustle for deals nights and weekends, how to knock on doors, how to talk to sellers, but more importantly, what are my rules of buying so that I could never lose money again, because I didn't have any money to lose. And very slowly, starting in the wholesale world with no cash or credit, right, and building slowly to getting some cash with assignment deals. And I did my first rehab in 2006. Broke even on that deal. It was in the Boston area. Breaking even for me was a big win. And from there, we just started really honing our processes down for our fix and flips, and ultimately then a wholesale company. So that's where I started, and then restarted. And I had a couple other restarts, but we don't have to get into those too, with big, apartment syndications and that sort of thing. So
yeah. So I mean, 2006 you came in, and there was a couple of years, and the market made a huge transition. How did you survive through that?
That's it. Well, again, I got hurt. So I didn't really survive. I got really hurt, and ego, cash, credit, like down and out. So I literally had to relearn from nothing. And I think that did help me, because once I said, I can't afford to lose any money, so I need to get a buying criteria down. I need to find out exactly how to work with sellers and solve their problems while still maintaining this margin. And I cannot sway from these rules. And those rules carried me all the way through 08, 09, 10, 11, 12. And it actually, we were extremely profitable during those years, because that's when, we learned how to, we had deal flow, we had our rules together, we had our crews, and we just kind of scaled from that point.
So you said rules of buying. That was a very important thing that I grabbed from you, because I'm taking notes also on this podcast. This is an opportunity for me to learn also. But for our listeners as well, rules of buying, you put that in place because there were some events that happened that hurt you financially, hurt your ego, hurt your credit-wise, and you had to rebuild and start off and say, okay, this is my buy box. I'm going to buy assets in this location. My LTV, my CLTV is going to be this. I'm going to buy this type of property, and I'm going to say strict to that. Was that some of the rules you created?
You nailed it.
Okay,
nailed it.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you listen to this podcast, it's very important. If you are a passive investor, investing alongside of someone, or if you're an active investor, you want to make sure that the person who you're aligning yourself with, they have a process, they have systems, they have rules of buying, they have all these things in place, and they're just not out there willy-nilly, buying things and don't have a process or rules in place. It's very important, because there's some people who get into a competitive market, which we are in now, and they overpay, and they count on cap rates instead of equity and everything else. They buy, we're buying off the cap rate. So they'll pay 110% of the contract price and chase a 6% or 4% yield. So now
Amen.
You talk about,
but those Fuquan, those are the buyers you want for when you and I find the good deals, because we have our systems in place.
For sure. So the multifamily stuff. So you start off, I'm presuming, single family.
Yes.
Fix and flips and buy and holds, and then you made a transition into multifamily. And I'm guessing, I could be wrong, you went to a seminar, someone said, this is it. This is a great way. Let's do it. The yields are high. Own 100 units instead of 21 single families. You can manage all your problems in one place. And you said, I'm in.
You know what? That's 100% accurate. That's exactly what happened. That's
So
it.
what happened in the multifamily?
Well, at first, I had to get my feet wet in rentals, right? So I was not financeable for 10 years post 2006 for long-term financing. So I had to learn how to get small rentals in places where I had cash to buy them. And that was not the Boston area. So that's what led me to like Western Pennsylvania or Ohio or even a little bit of Florida, where you could, invest 30 to 40,000 a unit, right, for X amount of rent. And if that cash flow worked, it was great. But instead of going for a Class A or Class B large complex, I was just buying small single family or two family houses in markets where you could buy assets for $15,000 to $25,000 a piece, right? And just put in 10 or 15,000 and rent them out $600 per unit. It wasn't great, but it was all I could do without the long-term financing piece. Then I went to a great seminar, exactly how you mentioned it. And I was interested at that point in being an active operator, but I wanted to learn how the passive stuff worked too. I wanted to learn how I would be able to treat investors. So I also became a passive investor on that national guru that taught me everything. I went in with him, and I also went in on a few people here locally, and also helped them. I was helping them raise some equity as well, along with my own equity that was in the projects. So that was another reset button for me, if you will. In fact, all 3 deals that I had invested in had serious issues, and I also learned what not to do. I had my own deals. I was doing my own deals too, but before any of that happened, I literally witnessed that national guru who taught everything about multifamily just stopped communicating with investors. Just like no quarterly call, like literally something went down and he just didn't show up to a quarterly call. He stopped sending out dividend checks. It was like awful. And the investors, of course, the worst thing you can do for investors, as I've learned, is just stop communication. And a bunch of people got angry, tried to take over the project, didn't understand where he went. And as it would turn out, there was a fire on the asset. And he was just waiting for an insurance check that wasn't coming. But because of that, he was running into cash flow issues and was afraid to face his investors. But what ultimately happened is because he didn't just tell people what was going on, the asset was frozen, taken back by the banks, and gone. And what happens to investors? I'm doing this not to scare off your people listening to the podcast. I want them to know that the operator and the communication with a Fuquan or a good operator that's in there is tantamount. And the moment the communication breaks down, your investment cannot just lose money, you can go to zero. Like in my case, with a multifamily national educator that was one of the starters in the space that's still out there teaching multifamily today. So, you heard that talk because I did that talk at our mastermind in June. But like it was a wake-up call, like what not to do as an operator and what challenges you could face, right? So if things do hit the fan, if shit hits the fan on one of these assets that the active operator or the general partner is running on, they have to know how to get their hands dirty sometimes and fire a third-party management company, get in there with maybe their own repositioning company. Like they need to learn. And I became obsessed from 2010, which is when all this happened, on operations. I became obsessed with if shit hits the fan, I need to know how to literally have my own team manage these things and manage these third-party management companies so that we know how to take care of and protect our investment and more importantly, our investors' investments. And those, you talk about lessons. So that was one of the big lessons is communication always, even especially when things aren't going as planned or projected. You need to over communicate with your people. That's one lesson. So
yeah, I think that's important. I mean, that just takes up the question I was going to ask you: what challenges did you go through or have? That's one of the questions I asked the guests. But it's from what I hear, there were very good, expensive lessons, but it also, I presume, it helped you establish your business, grow your business, learn how to better communicate with investors, how to do things more efficient, how to have systems in place, how to leverage the human capital that you have in order to run efficient business like you do today. It's now the market is changing. Yields are being compressed, cap rates are being compressed, inventory is short. It's all this doom and gloom. The market is going to crash. I'm still bullish in my rental portfolio, buying more assets. I was out yesterday, boots on the ground, looking at a couple of properties. We had an economist come out and speak to the group in December, gave us some good news on the rental market. So I'm still bullish and buying stuff. What are you guys doing in your area? What are you seeing as far as, let's talk about the challenges first, and then, what are you doing to overcome that?
Sure, sure. So the challenges are certainly what you just mentioned. We, in the Boston area specifically, we are now running on negative cap rates because people
Mm.
are just looking to get their money out of their countries into this country. So they're buying things at losses, which has really pushed anybody who's looking for dividends or yield out of like the main metropolitan markets. So deal flow is always 100% the challenge. And there's tons and tons of cash on the sidelines, as you're already aware. So literally, you have to become an expert in what you and I do, which is trying to direct to seller, direct to assets, and find those mom and pops that aren't being managed appropriately. Our biggest challenge, I think, for everybody is, even though we have our systems in place, is just deal flow. If we have to look at 100 deals, I mean, we're not even buying one anymore. Like, we're looking at 150, 200 deals to try to find one. So we're kind of burning our resources. And that means that we have to kind of take, if that's not working, do we open up a new asset class? Do we spend more time, on the operations side and kind of honing in on those procedures? So that's kind of what we're doing, is prioritizing where we spend our time while we are holding on to a lot of cash. But that means we're still buying. We are absolutely still buying when deals make sense. It's just, there's a lot of people, like you said, buying on cap rate, or uneducated buyers out there that we're now competing with, and it's making it difficult to make smart decisions. That's probably the biggest challenge.
I mean, I think also, thanks for sharing that. I think also what most people, and where I see success in my area where I'm at in New Jersey, is the marketing. I mean, the marketing, people are chasing deals on MLS. They're chasing on-market deals instead of spending the number one factor, time, right, which is more valuable than money, on marketing, researching, and how do you get these buyers. Everybody's online on Facebook and everything else. Are you guys having any challenges with marketing to get deals? I mean, what are you doing as far as marketing? Have you ramped that up? Are you guys spending a lot of time trying to figure out habits of people, and how do you communicate with them to get a deal?
Yeah, so what we did is we actually changed our marketing method. So in 2019, we actually did zero direct marketing, direct mail marketing. And we shifted everything into, targeting specific people who needed our services, just like you mentioned, like an avatar, like who in the past has been our primary client, and looking at that and really trying to reach out to those people with very soft messaging, with phone calls, texts, email marketing, Facebook, Instagram. That's helped in this super competitive market where everybody and their brother was sending direct mail. We sort of shifted out of that space, and that helped us keep our cost per lead down while still getting a lower amount of leads, but the cost per lead went down as well. So that helped us in our business last year. And this year, we're going to be starting to implement direct mail back again, but it's different messaging. It's like, how can we be different? And that was one of the big themes for the year, where everybody's doing this. We need to do this, and that's our local market in Boston. And I think we've got some good, cool little messaging and things that investors have never done before that we're going to be testing in our local market. So we'll see if that works.
That's awesome. I mean, I think moving in all directions at once is important. With the mail piece, with the texting, then you can measure the KPIs to see where you're getting the most leads from, on the acquisition side and everything else. So, I mean, I think it's great, man. I really want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing, this wealth of knowledge with us. And I mean, how can people reach you? I mean, I see you want to plug your social media stuff and your websites and everything else. You guys, I mean, you don't do any education. You're not one of those national gurus going around selling education, are you?
Right. We are educated regionally, but it's more so just to make relationships, right? So we do have, I mean, we don't sell it. It teaches people how to do deal flow, how to do the marketing, like you just said, and it's mainly based for Mass, New Hampshire, Connecticut, maybe like New England people, because in New Jersey specifically, right? Like, if you could do business up here in like the most regulated states in the country, like, you could pretty much take that and replicate it anywhere else. But yeah, we have a marketing course that teaches people how to set up their business, how to market, how to do deal flow, how to negotiate with sellers, how to work through. It's all residentially based, but how to close those deals, how to do trust assignments, pretty much everything, gives them all the marketing pieces, gives them all the forms and contracts that they could possibly need. And it's all online. It's $500, but we don't sell it because we just use that as a tool to make relationships with people. And if they want to invest $500 in their own education and they want to sell us a deal or sell you a deal, right, with what they've learned, that's kind of what we go for, is the relationship, the long-term relationship.
That's awesome, man. They paying $500 for probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of education that you learn from lessons, and you just package it up for them to kind of be a step ahead. What's the website?
Oh, sure. That website is CompleteDealFlowSystem.com. That's a sales website, so they'll be led through the funnel. But if they want to just get in touch with me directly, that's cool too. It's I'm on Facebook, Nick Aalerud, Aalerud. I'm on LinkedIn, and our company groups are AA Real Estate Group. They can find us on Instagram and Facebook there, and whatever other social media stuff that my team's got going on out there. I'm on Facebook though, for the most part. That's where I'm at.
All right, so it's AA, is not double A? Did I screw that up?
It is, no, it's double A. You're right. You got it.
I'm just teasing you.
and just to set the record straight, the double A is not to be first in the phone book. Look at my last name. I had to work for this, man. I was first in line in every classroom. I had to be first in the reports. The sweat pouring down my face my whole life.
That's what's up. I appreciate you coming on the show. Another great episode. PFREI, Passion for Real Estate Investment. Nick Aalerud. Thank you, sir. I really
thank you, man.
You coming on the show, and you have a podcast also. Plug your podcast, man.
Oh, sure. You guys love it. Fuquan, you'll be a guest here pretty soon. It's the Shut Up and Do It podcast. And people can check that out. We kind of go through personal or professional struggles and overcoming them. As you heard a couple of mine on this show, I've had my share, but everyone I've found has that commonality where everyone has something that they've had to overcome to get to be the entrepreneur that they are today. So we try to highlight those and celebrate the victories. And that's you can find that at shutupanddoitrealestate.com for that podcast. So
that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it. Another great episode. PFREI. Catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the other social media stuff. Thanks. Have a great day, man.